In the beginning, there was only stillness. No sky, no sea, no earth, only a formless void wrapped in deep silence. And then, as if stirred by breath itself, came a whisper of power. A divine voice calling light into being. Light broke through darkness, dividing night from day. It was the first movement of creation, not by accident, not by chaos, but by intent. And what the Creator saw was good. On the second day, the waters were parted, the heavens above and the sea below, set in place like curtains pulled gently across a stage. On the third, dry land rose from the deep, and with it, life stirred. Trees sprouted, vines twisted, flowers unfolded under sunlight they had never known. And again, it was good. On the fourth day, the stars blinked into place. The moon took its place in the cool of night, while the sun blazed with golden purpose. On the fifth, birds took wing over the seas, and fish danced in the water's depths. On the sixth, the land came alive with creatures of all shapes, from the lowly ant to the mighty lion. But the final touch was humanity. Not just another beast of the field, but a being shaped in the Creator's image, capable of love, of thought, of choice. Man was formed from dust, fragile and small. But then, something eternal entered him, the breath of God. And in that breath he lived. His name was Adam. The Creator placed him in a garden, Eden, a paradise of beauty, peace, and purpose. Trees heavy with fruit, rivers that sang over stones, animals that came to Adam as he gave them names. Everything was his, save one tree, the tree of knowledge, both good and evil. It stood in the center like a secret, a boundary, a test. But even paradise can feel lonely. So from Adam's own rib, close to his heart, the Creator formed a woman. Her name was Eve. And when Adam saw her, his voice sang with wonder. "At last," he said, "bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh." They walked together, naked and unashamed, in perfect harmony, with each other. With creation, with the Creator. But somewhere in that garden, a shadow moved. The serpent, clever and quiet, spoke to Eve. Not with force, but with suggestion. Did God really say you must not eat? Surely you won't die. Surely, you'll become like gods yourselves. Eve looked. The fruit shimmered. Her hand reached. And with a single bite, the world changed. The taste of that fruit was sweet, but it came with a bitter price. As soon as Adam ate, alongside Eve, something invisible shattered. Their eyes opened, not to glory, but to shame. Nakedness once pure now felt exposed. They scrambled for fig leaves, trying to cover what they never noticed before. When the Creator came walking through the garden, as he had so many evenings before, they didn't run toward him in joy. They hid. "Where are you?" the divine voice called. Adam's answer trembled. "I heard you, and I was afraid." The Creator knew. Of course he knew. And so came the reckoning. To the serpent he declared, "You will crawl on your belly and eat dust. There will be enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. One day, her descendant will crush your head. To Eve, pain in childbirth. To Adam, toil and sweat in the dust from which he came. The ground, once fertile, would fight him now. Thorns would grow beside wheat. Shadows would creep beside light. And then came the final blow, exile. They were sent away from Eden, eastward, where an angel with a flaming sword stood guard at the entrance, not out of cruelty, but to protect the tree of life from hands now stained by disobedience. But even in judgment, there was a flicker of grace. God made garments of skin for Adam and Eve, something lasting, something sacrificial. A whisper of what redemption might one day require. Outside Eden, the world began again. Adam and Eve bore sons, first Cain, then Abel. Cain, a farmer. Abel, a shepherd. One worked the soil, the other tended flocks. Both brought offerings to God, but Abel's, full of heart and sacrifice, was accepted. Cain's, somehow lacking, was not. Jealousy festered. And in the field one day, Cain struck his brother down. The first murder. Blood on soil that had barely begun to breathe life. When God asked, "Where is your brother?" Cain answered, "Am I my brother's keeper?" But the ground had already spoken. Abel's blood cried out. And though Cain was spared immediate death, he was marked, not for destruction, but for wandering. A symbol of mercy and consequence mingled. He went east, even farther from Eden, and built a city. Civilization began, music, metal, livestock, generations. But violence, too, spread like vines through cracks in the earth's innocence. Adam and Eve had another son, Seth, and through him, a different line would emerge. One that remembered. One that still called on the name of the Lord. As the earth filled, so did wickedness. Giants walked among men. The heart of humanity bent more and more toward evil. And so, the Creator's heart grieved. It was not wrath that stirred first, it was sorrow. And with that sorrow came a decision, a cleansing, a reset. But not without hope. For one man stood apart, righteous, blameless, walking with God. His name was Noah. In a world drowning in violence, Noah stood as a quiet echo of Eden. He listened when others mocked. He obeyed when others ignored. And that made all the difference. God gave him a task unlike any ever spoken to man: build an ark. A massive vessel, shaped by divine dimensions, longer than a city block, 3 stories tall, sealed with pitch. Made of cypress wood. Not just a boat, but a sanctuary. A promise in the shape of timber. Noah set to work. While the world went on eating, drinking, marrying, and laughing, Noah hammered. He sawed. He prayed. He waited. And he preached, not with words alone, but with every beam, every nail, every breath of obedience. And then, when the ark stood complete, God said, "Come in." Noah entered with his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. Pairs of animals followed, clean and unclean, crawling and flying, roaring and cooing. The door closed, not by Noah's hand, but by God's. And the sky broke open. Rain, for 40 days and nights, fell in a torrent. Fountains burst from the deep. The earth, once lush with life, drowned in silence. Mountains vanished beneath waves. Cities, voices, laughter, gone. Only the ark floated. A wooden cradle on a restless sea. For 150 days waters ruled. And then, the wind came. The waves began to recede. The peaks of mountains appeared like bones rising from a grave. The ark came to rest on the slopes of Ararat. Noah sent out a raven. Then a dove. The first returned. The second too. But one day, the dove came back with an olive leaf, hope, held gently in its beak. Life had returned. Later, the dove did not return at all. It was time. Noah opened the ark. The animals spilled out onto dry land, into a world reborn. Noah built an altar. The first thing built after the flood was not a home, but an offering. God smelled the sacrifice, and made a vow: never again would he destroy the earth in this way. And in the sky, he painted his promise. The rainbow, a bow laid down in peace. A reminder not only to mankind, but to God himself, of mercy outweighing wrath. Then came a new beginning. God told them, "Be fruitful. Multiply. Fill the earth again." But something had changed. Animals now feared humans. Meat was given as food, but blood, the life within it, remained sacred. Noah planted a vineyard. One evening, drunk on his own wine, he lay exposed in his tent. Ham, one of his sons, saw him and mocked. His brothers walked backward with a blanket, covering their father with dignity. When Noah awoke, he spoke words that echoed into the future, blessing Shem and Japheth, but cursing Canaan, Ham's son. From these sons, the nations were born. Names that would become empires, tribes, and tongues. The earth grew crowded once more. And then, humanity gathered in the plain of Shinar, speaking one language, dreaming one ambition. They would build a tower, A name. A monument to themselves. It would rise to the heavens. The tower stretched upward brick by brick, like a challenge whispered to the sky. "We will not be scattered," the people said. "We will rise. We will make a name for ourselves." In the plain of Shinar, pride took root, not as a shout, but as a steady drumbeat. Unity, once a gift, had become a weapon. Their language gave them power. And that power made them bold. So they built a tower meant to reach the heavens. A ziggurat of ambition. But what they could not see from below was what stirred above, not anger, but concern. The Lord came down to see the tower. And in his divine wisdom, he saw the seed of ruin in their unity, not because they built, but because they built apart from him. So he did not strike them. He did not shatter the tower. Instead, he confused their speech. Suddenly, words became meaningless. Instructions turned into nonsense. The workers couldn't understand each other. Cooperation collapsed. The city was called Babel, because it was there that the Lord confused the language of the earth. And just like that, the people scattered. Not in punishment, but in protection. A world spread wide to prevent a pride that would destroy it too soon. From that scattering, generations passed. Names came and went, until one name lingered like a flame, Abram. He lived in Ur, a city of idols and noise. Yet something in Abram, not perfect, but open, caught the divine eye. And so God spoke. "Leave your country. Leave your father's house. Go to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and you will be a blessing." It was a promise spoken not just to one man, but through him, to the world. Abram obeyed. He left everything familiar, his home, his kin, his gods, and walked into the unknown, carrying only a word from heaven and a trembling faith. Beside him was Sarai, his wife. They had no children, though years had passed. They were old, but the promise was young. They traveled to Canaan, a land still held by others. There, God appeared again and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." Abram built an altar. He worshipped. But faith is not without detours. A famine came, and they fled to Egypt. There, afraid for his life, Abram told Pharaoh that Sarai was his sister. Pharaoh took her into his palace, but plagues followed. The truth came out, and Pharaoh sent them away. Back in Canaan, Abram and his nephew Lot parted ways, their flocks too large to share space. Lot chose the fertile plains near Sodom, while Abram remained among the hills. Then came another vision. God brought Abram outside and said, "Look at the stars. Count them if you can. So shall your descendants be." And Abram believed. It was credited to him as righteousness. Still, time passed. Sarai remained barren. The promise lingered like a distant echo. So Sarai offered her servant, Hagar, to bear a child in her place. Hagar bore a son, Ishmael. But this was not the child of the promise. And God was not done. Abram was 99 when the voice of God came again, clear, firm, unyielding. "I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Walk before me, and be blameless." And then came the covenant, sealed not with a dream, but with a mark. A promise of legacy, written not on paper, but in flesh. Circumcision, a symbol that would bind Abram and his descendants forever to the divine. God changed his name, from Abram, exalted father, to Abraham, father of many nations. And Sarai, too, received a new name, Sarah, princess, a queen to bear a future king. And then, the unthinkable promise, "I will bless her. She will give you a son." Abraham fell to the ground, laughing. Not in mockery, but in wonder. He was nearly 100, Sarah, almost 90. Could laughter come from barren ground? But God said yes. "You will name him Isaac," meaning he laughs. One day, 3 strangers came to visit Abraham near the oaks of Mamre. He welcomed them with food and rest. They were more than men, they carried divine presence. and they echoed the promise again. By this time next year, Sarah will have a son. From within the tent, Sarah laughed. She had waited a lifetime. She had cried too many nights. Hope, for her, had faded into something silent. But the voice outside said, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord?" And then the strangers turned their attention to Sodom. The cries of injustice and evil had risen too high. Abraham, learning their intent, pleaded, not for the city, but for the righteous within it. "What if there are 50 righteous? Or 40? Or 10? God listened. But the city's heart was stone. 2 of the visitors reached Sodom at twilight. Lot met them, urging them into his home. But the men of the city surrounded the house, demanding the strangers be handed over. Their wickedness was raw, unashamed. Lot tried to protect the visitors, even offering his daughters in desperation. But the visitors revealed their power, blinding the mob, and warning Lot, "Flee. This city will fall." At dawn, Lot hesitated, and the angels took his hand. With his wife and daughters, he fled. "Do not look back," they said. But Lot's wife did. And in a moment, she was no more, turned to a pillar of salt, frozen in her longing for what was lost. Fire fell from heaven. Sodom and Gomorrah burned. The cities vanished beneath smoke and flame. Meanwhile, in a quiet tent far away, Sarah conceived. And in due time, laughter was born. Isaac, the child of promise, cried out his first breath. Abraham held him, tears in his eyes, joy in his bones. The laughter now was not disbelief, but delight. Sarah smiled. "God has brought me laughter," she said, "and all who hear will laugh with me." But in the background, shadows stirred. Ishmael, now a young man, looked on, and tension grew. Sarah saw it, and spoke to Abraham. "Send Hagar and her son away." It pained him, but God said, "Do as she asks. I will make a nation of him, too." So Hagar and Ishmael wandered into the wilderness. Their water ran dry. The boy wept beneath a bush. Hagar turned her face away, unable to watch him die. But God heard the boy's cry. An angel called out, "Do not be afraid. Lift him up." And nearby, a well shimmered into view. Water flowed. Life returned. Ishmael would grow strong and wild. A nation of his own. But the line of promise, it flowed through Isaac. Years passed. Isaac grew, laughter still echoing in his footsteps. But then, one morning, the skies turned solemn. A divine test came, not in fury, but in fire. God called to Abraham, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love. Go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Abraham said nothing. At dawn, he saddled the donkey. He split the wood. He took 2 servants, and Isaac. For 3 days they journeyed, and when the mountain appeared on the horizon, Abraham stopped the others. "Stay here," he said. "The boy and I will go worship. Then we will return." They climbed together. Isaac carried the wood. Abraham carried the fire and the knife. But Isaac looked up and asked, "Father, where is the lamb for the offering?" And Abraham, his voice steady but trembling, replied, "God will provide." On the mountaintop, Abraham built the altar. He laid the wood. He bound his son, the child of promise, and placed him there. Then he reached out his hand. The knife rose. But from the heavens came a cry, "Abraham! Do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know you fear God. You have not withheld your son, your only son." Abraham turned, and there, caught in a thicket, was a ram. He took it and offered it instead of Isaac. And the mountain was named Jehovah-Jireh. The Lord will provide. It was a moment that echoed through eternity. After this, Sarah passed away at 127 years old. Abraham mourned her deeply. He purchased a cave in Machpelah, the first piece of the promised land ever owned by his family, and laid her to rest there. But life moved forward. Abraham, now aged and wise, sent his servant on a mission to find a wife for Isaac, not among the Canaanites, but from his own kin. The servant journeyed to Nahor, carrying camels and gifts, praying as he reached a well. "Lord, let the woman who offers water to me and to my camels be the one." And before he finished speaking, Rebekah appeared. She offered water freely, her heart kind, her hands swift. The servant watched, silent and astonished. God had answered before the words had fully formed. She invited him to her home. There, the servant told his story. Her family, led by her brother Laban, agreed. And Rebekah, without hesitation, said, "I will go." She traveled back with him, and in the quiet of the field, Isaac saw her approaching. She asked, "Who is that man?" The servant replied, "It is my master." Rebekah veiled herself. Isaac brought her into his mother's tent, and loved her. She comforted his grief. She became his partner. His promise. Abraham lived on, long enough to see Isaac's joy. Then, full of years, he died, and was buried beside Sarah, the woman who had laughed and wept with him through the years. Isaac now carried the covenant. The flame passed from one generation to the next. But the path ahead would not be without struggle. For Rebekah, like Sarah, would face the silence of the womb. And yet again, heaven was listening. Rebekah prayed. Her womb had remained still for years, and Isaac, remembering his own birth's miracle, pleaded with God. And once again, the silence broke. She conceived. But the pregnancy was not peaceful. Something stirred within her, a struggle so fierce she cried out, "Why is this happening to me?" And the Lord answered, "Two nations are in your womb. Two peoples will come from you, and they will be divided. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came, she gave birth to twins. The first emerged red and hairy, like a small cloak. They named him Esau. The second came out gripping his brother's heel, as if refusing to be left behind. He was named Jacob. The boys grew. Esau became a man of the field, rugged, impulsive, a hunter. Jacob stayed near the tents, quiet, observant, thoughtful. Isaac loved Esau for his wildness and his game. Rebekah loved Jacob, seeing something more subtle in him. One day, Esau returned from the field, exhausted and hungry. Jacob was cooking stew, rich, fragrant lentils. "Give me some of that red stew," Esau demanded. But Jacob, ever cunning, saw an opportunity. "Sell me your birthright," he replied. Esau laughed. "I'm dying of hunger. What good is a birthright to me?" And just like that, the firstborn's privilege, the inheritance, the future, the name, passed from Esau to Jacob over a bowl of soup. Time passed. Isaac grew old. His eyes dimmed. Knowing his end was near, he called Esau and said, "Hunt for me. Prepare the food I love. Then I will bless you before I die." But Rebekah had heard. And she had not forgotten the promise, "The older shall serve the younger." While Esau was away, she dressed Jacob in Esau's clothes. She covered his hands and neck with goatskin. And she prepared the meal. Jacob entered his father's tent. Isaac, though blind, was suspicious. "You sound like Jacob," he said, "but you feel like Esau." He smelled the garments, touched the skins, tasted the stew. And then, he blessed him. A blessing that could not be undone. No sooner had Jacob left than Esau returned, with game, with pride, expecting his father's blessing. But the truth unraveled. Isaac trembled. "Your brother came deceitfully. He has taken your blessing." Esau cried out, "Bless me too, father!" But it was done. What had been spoken could not be reversed. Isaac gave Esau a lesser blessing, a life away from the richness of the land, a life of struggle. Esau wept. And then, hatred bloomed. He vowed to kill Jacob once their father died. Rebekah heard. She urged Jacob to flee, to her brother Laban's home in Haran. And so, once again, the chosen son became a wanderer. But as Jacob fled into the unknown, burdened by guilt and fear, night fell. He stopped to sleep, with only a stone for a pillow. And there, in a dream, heaven opened. A ladder stretched from earth to sky. Angels moved up and down its steps. And at the top stood the Lord. "I am the God of Abraham and Isaac," he said. "I will give you this land. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. I am with you and will keep you wherever you go." Jacob awoke, trembling. Surely God was in this place. He whispered, and I did not know it. He named the place Bethel, the house of God. And he set out once more, into the east, with the promise in his heart and the stone still warm from heaven beneath his arm. Jacob journeyed eastward, following the trail of exile and hope. The land grew unfamiliar, but the promise still burned in his chest, a vow whispered by heaven in the stillness of the night. At last he arrived near Haran, where shepherds were gathered beside a well. A massive stone covered its mouth. Jacob greeted them and asked about his uncle, Laban. As they spoke, a young woman approached. Graceful and strong, Rachel, Laban's daughter, leading her flock. Jacob watched, heart stirring. Without waiting, he rolled away the stone, a task meant for many men, and watered her sheep. Then he wept. He had found family. And something more. Rachel ran to tell her father. Laban welcomed Jacob with joy. "Surely you are my own flesh and blood," he said. Jacob stayed and worked. A month passed, and Laban asked what wages he desired. Jacob answered without hesitation, "I will work 7 years for Rachel." And he did. Day after day, under sun and moon, Jacob labored. Yet the years felt like days, so deep was his love. But on the wedding night, Laban deceived him. Under the veil and darkness, it was not Rachel, but her older sister, Leah, whom Jacob married. In the morning, the truth shattered him. He confronted Laban, who shrugged. "In our land, the older daughter must be married first. Work 7 more years, and you may have Rachel too." Jacob agreed. And thus he took both sisters as wives, a decision that would breed sorrow. Leah, unloved, longed for Jacob's heart. God saw her pain and opened her womb. She bore son after son. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Rachel, barren, grew desperate. She gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob, and 2 sons were born, Dan and Naphtali. Leah followed, offering her servant Zilpah, who bore Gad and Asher. Leah conceived again, Issachar and Zebulun. Then a daughter, Dinah. Finally, Rachel's prayer was answered. She bore a son, Joseph, and hope bloomed. Jacob's household grew, not just in number, but in tension. The 2 sisters, bound by rivalry, cast long shadows over every tent pole. After years of service, Jacob asked to leave. But Laban, seeing that God's blessing had come through Jacob, begged him to stay. They agreed on wages, spotted and speckled livestock. Through clever breeding and divine insight, Jacob's flocks flourished. Laban's envy grew. God spoke again. "Return to your homeland. I will be with you." Jacob gathered his wives, children, servants, and flocks, and fled while Laban was away. But Laban pursued him, furious. They met in the hills of Gilead. God warned Laban in a dream, "Do not harm Jacob." So instead, they made a covenant. A pillar of stone stood between them, a witness of separation and peace. Jacob moved on. But ahead lay something even greater, a shadow from his past. Esau. Word came. Esau was approaching, with 400 men. Jacob was terrified. He split his camp in 2. He sent gifts ahead, goats, camels, donkeys, herds upon herds, hoping to soften his brother's heart. Then, alone in the night, Jacob crossed the stream of Jabbok. And a figure appeared, not a man, not a beast, and wrestled him until dawn. They fought in silence, in struggle, in sacred sweat. Jacob would not let go. "I will not release you," he gasped. Unless you bless me. The figure touched his hip, wrenching it from its socket. And still, Jacob clung. Then came the name. Your name is no longer Jacob, deceiver. You are Israel, one who struggles with God. And with the sunrise, Jacob limped forward. Changed. Named. Blessed. A prince of dust who had wrestled the divine. Morning light spilled over the hills as Jacob, now Israel, approached the moment he had feared for years. Esau was coming. He arranged his family in careful order, placing the maidservants and their children first, then Leah and hers, and finally Rachel with young Joseph at the rear. Jacob stepped ahead of them all. 7 times he bowed to the ground as Esau approached, his heart pounding like a war drum. But what came next was not wrath. Esau ran to meet him, not with a sword, but with arms open wide. He embraced Jacob, kissed him, and both brothers wept. The years melted. The pain dissolved. Not forgotten, but forgiven. Esau looked at the gifts and waved them away. I have enough, he said. But Jacob insisted. Please take them. Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God, and you have received me with grace. So peace was made. Esau returned to Seir. Jacob journeyed on to Shechem and settled there. He bought land, pitched tents, and built an altar, El Eloh Israel. God, the God of Israel. But peace would not last. Dinah, Jacob's daughter, went out to visit the women of the land. There Shechem, the son of the local ruler, saw her, took her, and defiled her. Then, strangely, he loved her and asked to marry her. Jacob was grieved. His sons, Simeon and Levi, were enraged. The ruler came, offering alliances, gifts, and intermarriage. Jacob's sons agreed, but with a condition: every male must be circumcised. The people of the city consented. 3 days later, as they lay in pain, Simeon and Levi entered the town with swords drawn. They slaughtered every man, rescued Dinah, and plundered the city. Jacob was horrified. You have made me stink among the people of this land, he said. They will rise against us. But fear fell on the surrounding cities. No one pursued them. God spoke. Go to Bethel. Build an altar. Jacob obeyed. He buried the foreign gods his family had gathered, and journeyed to the sacred place where heaven had once opened above his head. There, God appeared again. I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. Kings will come from you. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I now give to you. Jacob built an altar and poured out a drink offering. The past, present, and future folded into one sacred act. Then they traveled on. But sorrow struck again. Near Bethlehem, Rachel went into labor. The birth was hard, the pain great. As her life slipped away, she named the child Benoni, son of my sorrow. But Jacob renamed him Benjamin, son of my right hand. Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath. Jacob set a pillar over her grave, a stone of memory and mourning. His heart heavy, Jacob continued. His father Isaac was nearing the end of his days. When the time came, Jacob and Esau reunited once more, to bury their father beside Abraham and Sarah, in the cave of Machpelah. The torch had passed. A generation had ended. But far to the north, a boy named Joseph, Rachel's son, was growing in his father's eyes like the morning star. And in the other brothers' hearts, a storm was forming. Joseph was 17, young, bright-eyed, and full of dreams. He was his father's delight, the firstborn of Rachel. Wrapped in the memory of the wife Jacob had truly loved. To show his affection, Jacob gave Joseph a special garment, a long robe of many colors. It shimmered in the sun, flowing richly over Joseph's shoulders. A mark of favor and of separation. His brothers saw it and burned with jealousy. Joseph, unaware or perhaps too innocent to know better, began to share his dreams. In one, he said, eyes wide with wonder, we were binding sheaves in the field. My sheaves stood upright, and your sheaves bowed down to mine, the brother scowled. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. Even Jacob rebuked him this time, but deep down, he remembered the voice of God and pondered it in silence. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers in the fields. They saw him coming from afar, the robe a banner of their bitterness. "Here comes the dreamer," they muttered. They plotted. "Let's kill him," one said. "Throw him into a pit. Say a wild beast devoured him." But Reuben, the eldest, had a softer heart. "Don't shed blood," he said. "Throw him into this cistern." He planned to rescue Joseph later. So when Joseph arrived, they stripped off the robe, seized him, and threw him into the empty pit. Then they sat and ate, as if nothing had happened. A caravan appeared on the horizon, Ishmaelites traveling to Egypt. Judah spoke. "Why kill him? Let's sell him. He is our brother, after all." So they lifted Joseph from the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. The dreamer was led away in chains. They dipped his robe in goat's blood, brought it to Jacob, and said, "We found this. Is it your son's?" Jacob tore his clothes. He wept without comfort. "I will go to my grave mourning," he cried. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Though a slave, Joseph found favor. God was with him. Potiphar saw it, and made Joseph overseer of his household. But Potiphar's wife watched Joseph too, not with admiration, but with desire. Day after day, she tempted him. "Lie with me," she whispered. He refused. "My master trusts me. How could I do this evil and sin against God?" One day, when no one else was in the house, she grabbed his cloak and begged again. He fled, leaving the cloak behind. She cried out, and lied. Potiphar returned, angry and wounded by betrayal. Joseph was thrown into prison. But even there, God was with him. The warden saw Joseph's wisdom and gave him charge of the other prisoners. In the shadows of injustice, Joseph served. 2 new prisoners arrived, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Both had troubling dreams. Joseph noticed their sadness and asked, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer dreamed of a vine with 3 branches, budding and blossoming. He pressed grapes into Pharaoh's cup. Joseph said, "In 3 days you will be restored. Remember me when you are free." The baker dreamed of 3 baskets of bread, with birds eating from the top one. Joseph's voice was somber. "In 3 days Pharaoh will lift your head and hang you." 3 days passed. The dreams came true. But the cupbearer forgot Joseph. And for 2 more years, the dreamer waited in silence. 2 full years passed in the dim hush of the prison. Joseph waited unseen. The man who once dreamed of stars now woke to stone walls and iron doors. But one night Pharaoh dreamed. In the stillness of sleep, he saw 7 fat cows grazing by the Nile, healthy and strong. Then came 7 lean cows, hollow, starved, and they devoured the fat ones. But their bodies remained thin, as if they had eaten nothing at all. He awoke unsettled. He slept again, and dreamed of 7 plump ears of grain, followed by 7 scorched and withered ones. The thin ears swallowed the full ones. Pharaoh rose, troubled. He summoned magicians and wise men, but none could explain the dreams. Then the cupbearer spoke, memory awakened like a long-buried seed. "Today I remember my faults," he said. He told Pharaoh of Joseph, the Hebrew slave who interpreted his dream in prison. Pharaoh sent for him at once. Joseph was brought up from the pit, shaved, dressed in clean garments. He stood before the throne, humble, steady. "I have heard you can interpret dreams," Pharaoh said. Joseph answered, "It is not in me. But God will give Pharaoh the answer he seeks." He listened carefully as Pharaoh told the dreams. Then, with calm certainty, Joseph spoke. "The dreams are one. God is showing Pharaoh what is about to happen. 7 years of abundance will come to Egypt. followed by 7 years of famine so severe that the plenty will be forgotten. He continued, his voice clear. Let Pharaoh appoint a wise man to oversee the land. Store grain during the good years, so the nation may survive when the famine comes. Pharaoh looked at his servants. Can we find anyone like this man, in whom is the Spirit of God? He turned to Joseph. Since God has shown you all this, there is none so wise as you. You shall be over my house. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. And just like that, the prisoner became prince. Pharaoh gave Joseph his signet ring, fine linen robes, and a gold chain. He rode in the second chariot, and people cried out before him, Bow the knee! Joseph was 30. He was given a new name, Zaphanath-Paneah, and a wife, Asenath, daughter of a priest of On. The years of abundance came. Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, storing grain in every city until it was beyond measure, like sand by the sea. 2 sons were born to him during this time. The first he named Manasseh. For God has made me forget my hardship and my father's house. The second, Ephraim. For God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Then came the famine. It spread across Egypt, and beyond, to the lands of Canaan. Hunger echoed in every home. People came to Pharaoh, and he sent them to Joseph. And so the dreamer stood at the center of the world's survival. Back in Canaan, Jacob heard there was grain in Egypt. He looked at his sons. Why do you just stand here? He said. Go. Buy grain, that we may live and not die. 10 brothers set out, all except Benjamin, the youngest, Rachel's last son. Jacob could not bear to risk him. They came before Joseph, and bowed. He knew them instantly. But they did not recognize him. Joseph remembered his dreams, and a plan began to form. Joseph stood before his brothers, cloaked in the splendor of Egypt. His face was older, his voice deeper, his garments royal. They saw only a powerful governor, not the boy they once betrayed. He spoke harshly, testing them. Where are you from? He asked. From Canaan, they answered. We've come to buy food. Joseph narrowed his eyes. You are spies, he said. You've come to see where our land is exposed. No, my lord, they pleaded. We are honest men. All brothers. The youngest is with our father. One is no more. Joseph's heart stirred, but his face remained cold. To test your story, he said, one of you will stay behind. The rest may return with grain. But you must bring your youngest brother to me. Then I will know you speak the truth. He put them in custody for 3 days. Then he chose Simeon to stay. The others he sent away with sacks full of grain, and secretly he returned their silver to their bags. When they discovered the money, fear gripped them. What is this God has done to us? They asked. They returned to Jacob, told him everything. He wept for Simeon but refused to let Benjamin go. If I lose him too, he said, my gray head will go down to the grave in sorrow. But the famine continued. When the grain ran low, Jacob urged them to return. Judah stepped forward. Send the boy with me. I will take responsibility. If I do not bring him back, let the blame fall on me forever. Reluctantly, Jacob agreed. He sent gifts, balm, honey, spices, and almonds, and twice the silver, in case the first was some error. And he prayed, May God Almighty grant you mercy. When Joseph saw Benjamin among them, something within him broke. He told his steward, Bring them to my house. Prepare a feast. The brothers feared, unsure why they were being honored. They explained about the silver. The steward smiled. Your God must have put it there, he said. Do not be afraid. Simeon was released. They were given water, food, and rest. When Joseph arrived, they bowed again. He asked after their father. Is he still alive? They answered, He is well. Then Joseph turned to Benjamin. Is this your youngest brother? And his heart surged. Tears welled up, and he rushed away to weep in private. When he returned composed, the feast began. Benjamin was given 5 times more than the others, a quiet signal, a hidden test. The next morning, Joseph filled their sacks with grain again. But in Benjamin's bag, he placed his silver cup. They had just set out when Joseph's steward pursued them. "Why have you repaid good with evil?" he accused. "One of you has stolen my master's cup," they protested. "If any of us has it, he shall die." The bags were searched, from oldest to youngest. And there it was, in Benjamin's. They tore their clothes. The brothers returned to the city together. Joseph confronted them. Judah stepped forward, trembling. "God has uncovered our guilt," he said. "Let us all be your slaves." But Joseph said, "No. Only the one who took the cup will stay. The rest may go." Then Judah, the one who had once suggested selling Joseph, spoke again. He told Joseph everything. About their father. About Rachel. About the sorrow that would crush Jacob if Benjamin did not return. And then, with a heart cracked open, Judah offered himself in Benjamin's place. "Let me stay. Let the boy go." Joseph could hold back no longer. He ordered everyone to leave. Then he wept, loud, uncontrollably, and said, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers stood frozen, terrified. But Joseph stepped closer. "Do not be afraid," he said. "You meant evil against me. But God meant it for good, to save many lives." Joseph's brothers stood silent, stunned, unable to speak. The brother they betrayed was alive, not only alive but mighty, merciful, and weeping before them. He embraced Benjamin first, clinging to the only other son of Rachel. Then, one by one, he wept over each of his brothers, and the wall between them finally crumbled. News reached Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers had come. Pharaoh was pleased. "Tell them to bring their father and their families. I will give them the best of Egypt." Joseph loaded wagons with supplies and gifts. He gave each brother garments. But to Benjamin, 300 silver coins and 5 sets of clothes. To his father, he sent donkeys loaded with the finest goods. As they departed, he gave them one last instruction. "Do not quarrel on the way." When they returned to Canaan and told Jacob, his heart stopped. "Joseph is alive," they said. "Ruler of all Egypt." He could not believe it, until he saw the wagons. The treasures, the proof. Then his spirit revived. "It is enough," Jacob said. "My son is alive. I will go and see him before I die." And so Israel, as Jacob was now known, set out. On the journey, he stopped at Beersheba and offered sacrifices. There, God spoke to him in a vision. "Do not be afraid to go to Egypt. I will go down with you, and I will bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." Jacob arrived in Egypt, 70 in total, sons, grandsons, and daughters. Joseph rode to meet him in a chariot. When he saw his father, he threw his arms around him and wept for a long time. "Now I can die," Jacob whispered, "for I have seen your face and know you are alive." Joseph brought 5 of his brothers to meet Pharaoh. They were honest. "We are shepherds." Pharaoh allowed them to settle in Goshen, the best part of the land. He also met Jacob, who stood before the king and blessed him. "How old are you?" Pharaoh asked. "I am 130, Jacob replied. "Few and difficult have been the years of my life." So the people of Israel settled in Egypt. They thrived. Joseph provided for them through the famine, which grew worse. Egyptians came to him again and again. First they traded silver for food. When silver failed, they offered livestock. Then their land. Finally, themselves. "Buy us and our fields," they said. "We will be Pharaoh's servants." Joseph agreed, except for the priests. They kept their land. He gave seed, established a tax. 1/5 to Pharaoh, 4/5 to the people. "You have saved our lives," they said. "We will serve Pharaoh gladly." Meanwhile, Jacob lived 17 more years in Egypt. As his time drew near, he called Joseph and said, "Swear to me, do not bury me in Egypt. Take me to my fathers." Joseph promised. Later, when word came that Jacob was ill, Joseph brought his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to him. Jacob sat up, his eyes dim, but his spirit clear. "These two will be mine, like Reuben and Simeon," he said. Then he blessed them, but he crossed his hands, placing his right on the younger, Ephraim. Joseph tried to correct him, but Jacob said, "I know. Manasseh will be great, but his younger brother will be greater." And so, the blessing flowed in unexpected ways, just as it always had. With his strength fading, Jacob called for his 12 sons, not to say goodbye, but to bless them, each in turn. He began with Reuben, his firstborn. "You are my might, but unstable as water. You will not excel." For Reuben had dishonored his father's bed, and the wound never healed. Simeon and Levi were next, fierce, vengeful, violent. "Let me not enter their council," Jacob warned. "Cursed be their anger. I will scatter them in Israel." Then Judah. His words changed. "Your brothers will praise you," Jacob said. "You are a lion. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet." Through Judah, the line of kings would come, and one day, one greater than all. Zebulun would dwell by the sea. Issachar, strong as a donkey, would bear burdens. Dan would judge, and be a serpent on the path. Gad would be attacked, but overcome. Asher would enjoy rich food. Naphtali, swift and free, like a deer. Then Jacob turned to Joseph. "You are a fruitful vine," he said. "Though attacked and hated, your bough remained steady. The arms of your hands were made strong, by the mighty one of Jacob, the shepherd, the rock of Israel." His blessing for Joseph overflowed, blessings of heaven above and the deep below. And finally Benjamin, a ravenous wolf, devouring by morning, dividing spoil by evening. These were not simple farewells. They were glimpses of what would become 12 tribes, 12 roots of a nation not yet born. Then Jacob gave final instructions. "Bury me with my fathers," he said, "in the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham and Sarah lie, where Isaac and Rebekah lie, where I buried Leah." He drew his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph fell on his father's face and wept. He ordered his physicians to embalm Jacob, a process that lasted 40 days. Egypt mourned for 70 more. Then, with Pharaoh's permission, Joseph led a grand procession to Canaan, not just his brothers, but Egyptian dignitaries, chariots, horsemen. A royal funeral for a shepherd. They buried Jacob with reverence and returned to Egypt. But the brothers trembled. "Now that our father is gone," they whispered, "what if Joseph seeks revenge?" So they sent a message. "Our father left instructions, forgive your brothers." Joseph wept when he heard it. They came and fell before him, just as his dream had shown so many years ago. "We are your servants," they said. But Joseph lifted them up. "Do not be afraid," he said. "Am I in the place of God? You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to save many lives. I will provide for you and your children." And he did. Joseph lived to see 3 generations of descendants. Before he died, he gathered his brothers and said, "God will surely come to you and bring you out of this land to the land he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Then he made them swear, "When that day comes, take my bones with you." Joseph died at 110. He was embalmed, and placed in a coffin in Egypt. The book of beginnings closed not with a flourish, but with a promise yet to be fulfilled. And so the waiting began. Centuries passed. Egypt, once a place of refuge, became a land of chains. The descendants of Jacob, now called Israelites, multiplied in number, filling the land. But in time, a new Pharaoh arose who did not remember Joseph, nor the debt Egypt owed him. fear crept into the throne. "Behold," Pharaoh said, "the Israelites are too many. If war breaks out, they may join our enemies." So he enslaved them, forcing them into brutal labor, building cities, hauling stones, shaping bricks under a cruel sun. But the more they were oppressed, the more they grew. So Pharaoh turned to a darker plan. He ordered the Hebrew midwives, "When you deliver the Hebrew women, if it's a boy, kill him. If a girl, let her live." But the midwives feared God. They let the boys live and lied, saying, "Hebrew women give birth before we arrive." God honored their courage, and the people grew even more. Then Pharaoh gave a chilling decree. Every Hebrew boy born must be thrown into the Nile. In this dark time, a Levite woman gave birth to a son. She saw he was special, radiant with promise, and hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she made a basket of reeds, coated it with tar and pitch, and placed the child inside. She set it gently among the reeds of the Nile. His sister, Miriam, watched from a distance. And then Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe. She saw the basket, sent her servant, opened it. Inside, the baby wept, and her heart was moved. "This must be one of the Hebrew children," she said. Miriam stepped forward, brave and clever. "Shall I find a Hebrew woman to nurse him for you?" The princess nodded. So the child's own mother nursed him, and later, he was brought back to Pharaoh's daughter, who named him Moses. Drawn out of the water, Moses grew up in the palace of his people's oppressor. He learned Egyptian wisdom but carried a Hebrew heart. One day, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Anger flared. Moses struck the Egyptian and killed him. He buried the body in the sand. But word spread. When Pharaoh heard, he sought to kill Moses. So Moses fled into the wilderness of Midian. There, by a well, he defended some shepherd girls from hostile herdsmen. Their father, Jethro, welcomed him. In time, Moses married Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters. They had a son, Gershom. A stranger there. Years passed. In Egypt, the cries of the Israelites rose like smoke into heaven. Their labor was bitter, their backs bent beneath cruel masters. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Out in the wilderness, Moses led sheep near Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. There he saw a strange sight, a bush, ablaze with fire, yet not consumed. He drew near, and from the flames a voice called, "Moses, Moses!" "Here I am," he replied. "Do not come closer," the voice said. "Remove your sandals. This is holy ground." And then the revelation: "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses hid his face, afraid to look. God spoke again. "I have seen my people suffering. I have heard their cries. I have come to deliver them, and I am sending you." Moses trembled. "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" God answered, "I will be with you." Moses stood barefoot before the flame, wrestling with his fear. "If I go to the Israelites?" he asked. "And they ask, 'What is his name?' What shall I say?" And God replied with a name never spoken before, a name that shook eternity. "I am who I am. Tell them, I am has sent me to you." God continued, "Say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me. This is my name forever." Still, Moses hesitated. What if they don't believe me? God gave him signs. A staff that turned to a serpent. A hand that became leprous and was healed. Water from the Nile that would turn to blood. And yet Moses said, "But I am not eloquent. I am slow of speech and tongue." The Lord replied, "Who made man's mouth? Go, I will be with your mouth." But Moses pleaded again, "Please send someone else." God's anger burned, but still he showed mercy. "Your brother Aaron can speak. He is coming now to meet you. I will speak to you, and you shall speak to him." Moses obeyed at last. He returned to Jethro and asked to visit his people in Egypt. Jethro blessed him. On the way, God reaffirmed his purpose, but also showed how serious the mission was. At an inn, the Lord confronted Moses, and Zipporah, quick and wise, circumcised their son, appeasing God's wrath. Then Aaron met Moses in the wilderness. They embraced. Moses shared all that God had said and done. Together, they returned to Egypt. They gathered the elders of Israel. Aaron spoke. Moses showed the signs. And the people believed. They bowed and worshipped, for they knew God had seen their suffering. Then they came before Pharaoh. And the words rang out like thunder. "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go." Pharaoh frowned. "Who is the Lord that I should obey him? I do not know the Lord. And I will not let Israel go." Instead, he increased their burdens. "Make bricks without straw," he commanded. "Let them gather it themselves, but do not reduce their quota." The people groaned under the weight. Their foreman blamed Moses and Aaron. "You have made us stink in Pharaoh's eyes." Moses cried out to God, "Why have you brought trouble? Why did you send me?" But the Lord answered, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. With a mighty hand I will compel him." God reminded Moses of the covenant. "I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will deliver my people with outstretched arm and mighty axe. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God." But when Moses spoke again to the Israelites, they would not listen, their spirits crushed by suffering. Even Moses doubted. "How will Pharaoh listen to me, with faltering lips?" But the Lord was unshaken. He sent Moses and Aaron to speak, to act, to demand freedom. And then the stage was set. The river would run red. Egypt's gods would fall. And the name of the Lord would be known. God began his work not with thunder, but with command. When Pharaoh asks for a sign, "Throw down your staff. It will become a serpent." Moses and Aaron stood again before Pharaoh. At Aaron's toss, the staff writhed into a living snake. Pharaoh's magicians did the same, their rods turning to serpents through secret arts. But Aaron's serpent swallowed theirs whole. Still, Pharaoh's heart was hard. Then the Nile turned to blood. Aaron stretched his staff over the waters. Fish died, the river stank, and blood flowed through canals and jars. But Pharaoh's magicians mimicked the act, and Pharaoh turned away, untouched. 7 days later, frogs swarmed Egypt. They came from rivers, ovens, even into beds. Pharaoh begged Moses, "Pray to your God to remove them, and I will let your people go." Moses prayed. The frogs died. The land reeked. But Pharaoh hardened again. Then came gnats. Dust became insects that filled the air. The magicians tried but failed. "This is the finger of God," they said. Pharaoh didn't listen. Next came flies, thick, buzzing clouds. But this time, they avoided Goshen, where the Israelites lived. A line had been drawn. Pharaoh wavered. "Sacrifice to your God here," he offered. "No," Moses replied. "We must go into the wilderness." "Fine," Pharaoh said. "But don't go far." Then he pleaded for Moses to pray. The flies vanished, and Pharaoh broke his word. Then death struck livestock. Egyptian cattle died, but not one of Israel's. Still, Pharaoh refused. Next boils. Moses threw soot into the sky. It became dust, and boils broke out on man and beast. Even the magicians could not stand. Still, Pharaoh's heart did not bend. Then hail. Moses warned, "Gather your people and livestock. A storm is coming like Egypt has never seen." Some Egyptians believed, and brought their servants in. But many did not. Hail fell with fire, crashing down, destroying crops, trees, and beasts in the open. Only Goshen was spared. Pharaoh cried out, "I have sinned. The Lord is righteous. I will let you go." Moses prayed. The storm stopped. Pharaoh's heart hardened again. then locusts. They swept in like a living tide, devouring what the hail had spared. Egypt's fields became empty. Pharaoh again pleaded, and again changed his mind once relief came. Then came darkness. A deep, choking black covered Egypt for 3 days. No one moved. But in Goshen there was light. Pharaoh's voice now trembled. Go. Take your children, but leave your flocks. No, Moses said. We will take all that is ours. Pharaoh raged. Leave my sight. If I see you again, you will die. Moses stood tall. You have spoken truly. I will not see your face again. Then came the final blow. God told Moses, one more plague I will bring. After it, Pharaoh will drive you out. At midnight death would sweep through Egypt. Every firstborn would die, from Pharaoh's son to the lowest servant, even the cattle. But Israel would be spared. Instructions were given. Each household would take a lamb, without blemish. They would slaughter it at twilight, mark their doorposts with its blood, and roast the meat. They would eat in haste, sandals on, staffs in hand, ready to move. For on that night, the Lord would pass through Egypt. But where he saw the blood, he would pass over. This was the Lord's Passover, a night of both terror and deliverance. And it would never be forgotten. Midnight came, and with it silence. Then a wail pierced Egypt, sharp, high, and endless. From the palace to the prison, from the richest home to the humblest hut. Death had entered every Egyptian house. The firstborns were gone. Pharaoh's son lay lifeless in his arms. He summoned Moses and Aaron in the dead of night. His voice, once proud, now trembled. Leave, he said. You and your people. Go serve the Lord. Take your flocks. Take your children. And bless me also. The Egyptians urged them to go quickly. We are all dying, they said. The Israelites gathered their things, unleavened dough on their shoulders, silver and gold given freely by fearful neighbors. After 430 years in Egypt, the children of Israel departed, a multitude, hundreds of thousands strong, walking into freedom beneath a starlit sky. God led them not by the shortest route, but toward the wilderness, lest they turn back in fear. A pillar of cloud went before them by day, and fire by night, a beacon in the dark. Moses carried Joseph's bones with him, a promise not forgotten. But Pharaoh changed his mind. He pursued them with his army, chariots gleaming, wheels spinning, hooves thundering. The Israelites reached the Red Sea and looked back. Fear swallowed them. Why did you bring us here to die? They cried to Moses. Better to have served Egypt than to perish in the desert. But Moses stood firm. Do not be afraid, he said. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. God said, lift your staff. Moses stretched out his hand, and the sea split. Walls of water rose on either side. A path formed through the deep. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, the fire and cloud holding the Egyptians back. When the last Israelite stepped through, the fire lifted. Pharaoh's army charged into the sea. But at dawn, God troubled their wheels. They panicked. Let us flee, the Lord fights for them. Then Moses raised his staff once more, and the sea returned. Chariots, horses, and soldiers vanished beneath crashing waves. On the far shore, Israel stood in awe. Then they sang. Moses led the men, Miriam led the women, tambourines in hand. I will sing to the Lord, they cried, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. But freedom was only the beginning. They entered the wilderness. 3 days without water made them thirst. At Marah the waters were bitter. But Moses threw a piece of wood into the spring, and it became sweet. Soon after in Elim, they found 12 springs and 70 palm trees, a place of rest. But hunger followed. They cried out again. Did you bring us here to starve? God sent quail in the evening and manna in the morning, bread from heaven, white like frost, sweet like honey. They were told, "Gather only what you need. On the 6th day, gather double. On the 7th, rest." Some disobeyed. The manna spoiled. Others went out to gather, and found nothing. Still, the bread fell each morning like mercy. And so they journeyed on. At Rephidim, there was no water again. The people quarreled. Moses cried, "What shall I do?" God said, "Strike the rock." Moses obeyed, and water poured forth. But enemies watched. Amalek attacked. Joshua led the army, while Moses stood on a hill, staff in hand. As long as he held it high, Israel prevailed. But when he tired, Amalek gained ground. So Aaron and Hur stood beside him, holding up his hands, until the sun set, and the enemy fell. The wilderness was becoming a place of testing and revelation. Not long after the battle with Amalek, Israel camped at the foot of a vast, rugged mountain, Sinai. Smoke drifted from its peak. Thunder rolled through its cliffs. Lightning cracked the sky above. The mountain trembled, as if it too waited for what was coming. Moses climbed. God called to him, saying, "Tell the people, you have seen what I did to Egypt. I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all nations." Moses returned with the message. The people answered together, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do." Then God said, "Prepare them. In 3 days I will descend upon the mountain." The people bathed, consecrated themselves, and waited. On the 3rd day, morning broke with fire. The mountain roared with smoke. A trumpet sounded louder and louder. The people trembled. Then God spoke, his voice like thunder. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not misuse my name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not give false testimony. Do not covet." The people begged Moses, "Let God not speak to us again, or we will die." So Moses drew near. There, God gave more commands for justice, mercy, worship, and daily life. Laws to shape a people into a nation. He called Moses higher. For 40 days and nights, Moses remained on the mountain. God gave him tablets of stone, written by his own finger. Meanwhile, below, the people grew restless. They gathered around Aaron. "We don't know what happened to Moses. Make us a god to lead us." Aaron took their gold and fashioned a calf, a golden idol. "This," he declared, "is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." They danced. They feasted. They bowed to a lie. God saw. He burned with anger. "I will destroy them," he said. "I will start again with you, Moses." But Moses pleaded, "Remember your covenant. What will the nations say if you destroy your people?" God relented. Moses descended, and saw the calf, the dancing, the chaos. His fury broke loose. He smashed the tablets. He ground the calf to powder, mixed it with water, and made them drink it. Then he cried out, "Who is on the Lord's side?" The sons of Levi rallied. That day, 3,000 perished. Moses returned to God. "They have sinned greatly," he said. "But forgive them, or blot me out of your book." God said, "I will deal with each as they deserve. But my angel will still lead you." Moses set up a tent outside the camp to meet with God. There he begged, "If your presence doesn't go with us, don't send us forward." God replied, "My presence will go with you." Then Moses asked to see God's glory. And God said, "You cannot see my face and live. But I will place you in a cleft of the rock. I will pass by, and you shall see my back." So it was. The Lord passed before Moses, declaring, the Lord, merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. Moses returned with new tablets, and his face shone with light. He covered it with a veil. The covenant was renewed. The tabernacle, a portable sanctuary, was constructed just as God had shown. Gold, linen, acacia wood, and precious stones were used. The Ark of the Covenant was made, a golden chest to carry God's presence. At last, the tabernacle was finished, and the cloud of the Lord descended, covering it. By day a cloud, by night fire. When it moved, Israel moved. When it stayed, Israel stayed. God had come to dwell among his people, with the tabernacle complete and God's presence dwelling among them. Israel entered a new season, one of order, worship, and preparation. God spoke to Moses from within the tent. He gave instructions for offerings, bulls, goats, lambs, each with a purpose. Some were for sin, others for gratitude or fellowship. The blood would purify. The fire would ascend. The aroma, pleasing to the Lord. Priests were set apart, Aaron and his sons. They were clothed in sacred garments, anointed with oil, their heads crowned with the words, "Holy to the Lord." On the 8th day of their ordination, they offered sacrifices. The glory of the Lord appeared. Fire came from heaven and consumed the offering. The people shouted and fell on their faces. But not all approached with reverence. Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, offered unauthorized fire, strange incense not commanded by God. Fire came out again, but this time it consumed them. God spoke, "Among those who approach me, I will show myself holy." Aaron was silent. More laws followed, about clean and unclean animals, diseases, purification, festivals, justice. Israel was being shaped, not just as a nation, but as a people set apart. Then came the census. The tribes were counted, warriors, elders, Levites. Every tent had its place. Every banner its symbol. Order in the wilderness. Trumpets signaled movement. Clouds signaled direction. At last the cloud lifted. The people set out from Sinai. But soon complaints rose. About hardship, about manna, about meat. God sent quail. Then a plague. Even Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses. Has God spoken only through him? God summoned them to the tent. With prophets, I speak in visions. But with Moses, I speak face to face. Miriam became leprous, white as snow. Moses cried out, "Heal her, please." After 7 days outside the camp, she was restored. Then came Kadesh Barnea. 12 spies were sent into Canaan, one from each tribe. For 40 days they explored the land. They returned with fruit and reports. "It flows with milk and honey," they said. But giants dwell there. The cities are fortified. We cannot conquer them. Only 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, believed otherwise. But the people panicked. "Let us return to Egypt," they cried. "Let us choose a new leader." Moses fell on his face. Joshua and Caleb tore their clothes. "The Lord is with us," they pleaded. "Do not rebel." But the people talked of stoning them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared. God spoke, grieved. "How long will they reject me? None of this generation will enter the land, except Joshua and Caleb." For 40 days of doubt. They would wander 40 years. The people mourned. Then, in defiance, some tried to enter the land on their own, and were struck down by the Amalekites. The wilderness became their home. More rebellion followed. Korah and 250 leaders rose up. "Why should Moses lead? All the people are holy." But the earth opened and swallowed them. Fire consumed the rebels. Aaron's staff budded overnight, a sign of his chosen role. Water ran short again. God told Moses, "Speak to the rock." But Moses, angry, struck it twice. Water flowed, but so did consequence. "Because you did not trust me enough to honor me," God said, "you will not enter the promised land." Moses was silent. The journey continued. kings rose to curse Israel, like Balak of Moab, who summoned the prophet Balaam. But Balaam could not curse what God had blessed. From the mountains he looked down on the tents of Israel and said, "How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob!" But sin lingered. Israel fell into idolatry with Moabite women. A plague swept through the camp. Only the zeal of Phinehas stopped it. Another census was taken. A new generation had risen. They stood at the edge of the promised land, and Moses, now old, prepared to speak once more. The camp stood still in the plains of Moab, just east of the Jordan River. Beyond the waters lay the land of promise, so close they could see it, smell it on the wind. But one last voice would rise before they crossed. Moses. Now an old man, he gathered the people. He recounted everything. "The Lord brought you out of Egypt with a mighty hand. He led you through the wilderness, humbled you, tested you. Your clothes did not wear out. Your feet did not swell. He fed you with manna to teach you that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word from his mouth. He repeated the laws, not just to remind, but to renew. Choose life," he said. "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Teach these words to your children. Write them on your doorposts. When you walk, when you lie down, when you rise, remember." He warned of forgetting. When you live in houses you didn't build, eat from vineyards you didn't plant, don't say, "My hand gained this." Remember the Lord, who gives you power. He warned of idols. Do not follow other gods. Do not be seduced by nations around you. You are a holy people, chosen not because you were great, but because the Lord loves you. He reminded them of the covenant. Obey, and you will be blessed in the land, rain in season, children in your arms, flocks in the fields. Disobey, and curses will come, drought, defeat, exile. Then came the heart of his plea. The Lord has set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life, so you and your descendants may live. He appointed Joshua as his successor, a man filled with the Spirit. Then God summoned Moses to a high mountain, Mount Nebo. From there, the Lord showed him the whole land. The valley of Jericho, the hills of Judah, the sea beyond. Every promise made to Abraham stretched before him. And God said, "This is the land I swore to give. I have let you see it with your eyes. But you will not cross over." Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there, in the land of Moab. God himself buried him. No one knows his grave. He was 120 years old, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. Israel mourned for 30 days. And then, it was Joshua's time. God said, "Be strong and courageous. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night." So Joshua led them. The Jordan River was the first barrier, but when the priest carrying the ark stepped into its waters, the river stopped. The people crossed on dry ground. They set up 12 stones from the riverbed, a memorial to what God had done. Then, outside Jericho, Joshua encountered a man with a drawn sword. "Are you for us or for our enemies?" Joshua asked. "Neither," the man replied. "I am the commander of the Lord's army." Joshua fell face down. "What message does my Lord have?" "Remove your sandals," the commander said. "The place where you stand is holy." The conquest had begun, not just of land, but of hearts. God was not giving them land for the sake of power, but to establish a people who would walk with him, reveal him, and carry forward his promise. One rooted in dust, but destined for glory. Jericho, a fortress of stone and fear, stood between Israel and the promise. But God gave strange instructions. "March around the city once a day for 6 days," he said. 7 priests shall carry trumpets before the ark. On the 7th day, march 7 times. Then blow the trumpets. When you hear the long blast, shout. The walls will fall. No battering rams. No siege engines. Just steps, silence, and faith. So they marched. Day 1. Day 2. Soldiers walked. Priests blew horns. But no words were spoken. The people inside watched in confusion and dread. On the 7th day, they marched around the city 7 times. Then came the blast. Then the shout. And the walls of Jericho fell flat. Israel charged in, and the city was taken. All was devoted to destruction, except for one family, Rahab, the prostitute who had sheltered the spies. She and her household were spared and brought into Israel. God's power was clear. But pride soon crept in. At Ai, the next city, Israel assumed victory would be easy. They sent only a few men, and were soundly defeated. Joshua cried out to God, "Why have you brought us across the Jordan only to fall here?" And the Lord answered, "Israel has sinned. Someone has taken what was meant to be devoted to me." Through a process of casting lots, the guilty man was revealed Achan. He had taken silver, a robe, and gold, hiding them beneath his tent. He and his household were judged, and the sin was removed. Then Israel attacked Ai again, and this time, they conquered it. From there, victories followed, cities fell, kings were routed, alliances formed. Yet not all was as it seemed. The Gibeonites, hearing of Israel's power, disguised themselves. They wore old clothes, carried moldy bread, and claimed to come from a distant land. "Make a treaty with us," they said. Joshua and the leaders agreed, without seeking the Lord. Later they discovered the truth. The Gibeonites lived nearby. Israel kept the treaty but made them servants, woodcutters and water carriers for the tabernacle. 5 Amorite kings soon formed an alliance against Gideon. The Gibeonites cried out for help, and Joshua responded. He marched all night, and God gave them victory. As the enemy fled, God sent hailstones from heaven. More died from hail than by the sword. Then Joshua prayed a bold prayer. "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, moon, over the valley of Ajalon." And it happened. The sun stopped. Time paused. A full day extended so Israel could finish the battle. Never before or since had God listened to a man like that. One by one, the kings of Canaan fell. From the north to the south, the land was subdued. When the fighting ended, the land was divided by lot among the 12 tribes. Caleb, now 85, stood before Joshua and said, "Give me the hill country the Lord promised. I am still strong." He received Hebron. Cities of refuge were established, safe places for those who killed unintentionally. The Levites received towns, for their inheritance was not land, but the service of God. And the people found rest. Joshua gathered the tribes one last time at Shechem. He reminded them of God's faithfulness. "Your fathers worshipped other gods, but the Lord brought you out of Egypt, through the wilderness, and into this land." Then he challenged them. "Choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The people responded, "We will serve the Lord." Joshua made a covenant, set up a stone of witness, and dismissed the people to their inheritance. Then he died, 110 years old. They buried him in the land of promise. But after his generation passed, the hearts of the people began to wander. And once more darkness crept in. After the death of Joshua, Israel drifted like a ship without anchor. There was no king, no central voice. Each tribe lived in its own corner. And the people began to forget, not just the commands of God, but His very presence. They turned to idols, to Baal, to Asherah. The gods of Canaan seeped into their homes and hearts. So the Lord allowed them to fall into the hands of their enemies. But every time they cried out in anguish, He raised up a deliverer, a judge, to save them. These judges were not kings, but warriors, prophets, and leaders who stepped in when hope ran dry. The cycle repeated. Sin, oppression, cry for help, deliverance, peace, then sin again. Othniel was the first. Then Ehud, who struck down a foreign king with a hidden dagger. Then Shamgar, who killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad. Then came Deborah, a prophetess. She led with wisdom and courage. Calling Barak to battle. He hesitated. "I will go if you do," he said. Deborah agreed. "But the honor will not be yours. God will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." And he did. After the battle, Sisera fled and hid in the tent of Jael, a Kenite woman. She gave him milk, let him sleep, and then drove a tent peg through his temple. Israel sang again, but only for a time. The people sinned once more. God allowed Midian to rise against them. They swarmed like locusts, destroying crops, driving Israel into caves. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to a man threshing wheat in secret, Gideon. "God is with you, mighty warrior," the angel said. Gideon was doubtful. "If God is with us, why has all this happened?" But the call was clear. Gideon asked for signs. First, fire consumed his offering. Then he set out fleeces, one wet, one dry. God answered both times. Gideon gathered an army. 32,000 came. Too many, God said. So he trimmed it to 10,000. Still too many. Finally, God chose 300, those who lapped water with their hands. Armed only with torches, jars, and trumpets, they surrounded the Midianite camp at night. At Gideon's signal, they broke the jars, blew the trumpets, and shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" The enemy fled in terror, struck with confusion and fear. Victory came. Peace followed. But once Gideon died, the people fell again. They even made a golden ephod from the spoils of war, and it became a snare. Then came Abimelech, Gideon's son by a concubine, who murdered his 70 brothers and declared himself king. His rule was soaked in blood. A woman threw a millstone from a tower, crushing his skull. He cried to his armor-bearer, "Kill me, so they won't say a woman did it." Other judges followed, Tola, Jair, Jephthah, the outcast who made a tragic vow and lost his daughter. Then Samson, set apart from birth, a Nazirite, a man of immense strength and equal weakness. He fought the Philistines, tearing lions, burning fields, striking enemies. But he fell in love with Delilah. She coaxed the secret of his strength, his uncut hair. When he slept, she shaved it. The Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and made him grind grain in prison. But his hair began to grow. At a feast, they brought him out to mock him. Blind, Samson prayed, "God, strengthen me once more." He pushed the pillars of the temple, and it collapsed, killing more Philistines in his death than in his life. So ended the days of the judges. Israel was fractured. In those days, the scriptures say, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Darkness deepened. But not all hope was lost. In the shadows of chaos, a quiet story began to unfold, in a small town called Bethlehem. In the days when judges ruled and darkness covered the land, famine struck. A man named Elimelech left Bethlehem with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons. They settled in Moab, a land of foreign gods. There, Elimelech died. Naomi's sons married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. But after 10 years, both sons also died. Naomi was left alone. She heard that God had visited his people and brought food back to Bethlehem. So she rose to return. Her daughters-in-law walked with her. On the road, Naomi stopped. "Return to your mother's homes," she said. "May the Lord deal kindly with you." Orpah wept and kissed her goodbye. But Ruth clung to her. "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God." Naomi said no more. They came to Bethlehem, and the town stirred. "Is this Naomi?" the women asked. "Do not call me Naomi, pleasant," she said. "Call me Mara, bitter. For the Almighty has dealt harshly with me." It was the beginning of the barley harvest. Ruth asked to glean, to gather leftover grain behind the reapers. She found herself in the field of Boaz, a wealthy man, a relative of Elimelech. Boaz noticed her. "Whose young woman is this?" he asked. They told him. "She is the Moabite who came with Naomi." Boaz approached Ruth. "Do not go to another field," he said. "Stay here. I have told the men not to touch you. When you're thirsty, drink from our jars." Ruth bowed low. "Why have I found favor in your eyes?" Boaz answered, "I've heard all you've done for Naomi. May the Lord reward you." He gave her grain, invited her to eat, sent her home with more than she could carry. Naomi saw. Her heart stirred. "That man is a redeemer," she said. "One of our kin." She instructed Ruth carefully. "Washington, put on your best clothes. Go to the threshing floor. When he lies down, uncover his feet and lie there. He will tell you what to do." Ruth obeyed. At midnight Boaz woke and found her there. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Ruth. Spread your garment over me, for you are a redeemer." Boaz blessed her. "You've shown kindness, not chasing after younger men. I will do all you ask. But there is another redeemer closer than I." He gave her 6 measures of barley, and sent her home in peace. The next day, Boaz went to the town gate and met the other relative. He explained the matter. The man declined to redeem the land and marry Ruth, fearing it would complicate his inheritance. So Boaz declared, "I will redeem it." The elders witnessed it. The people rejoiced. Boaz married Ruth, and the Lord gave them a son, Obed. They placed him in Naomi's arms. Her emptiness filled, her bitterness sweetened. Obed would become the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of David, and David, the shepherd king, would one day point to another, greater son, whose birth would shake the heavens. But before David came, another story unfolded, one of anguish and hope. Israel demanded a king. Samuel was the prophet then, a boy once dedicated by his mother Hannah, who had prayed through tears at the tabernacle. God had given her a son. She gave him back. Samuel grew up under the priest Eli. One night God called him. "Samuel! Samuel!" He replied, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Samuel became the voice of God in Israel. But the people cried out, "Give us a king, like other nations." Samuel warned them, "He will take your sons for war, your daughters for service. He will tax your land. You will regret it." But they insisted. And God said, "Give them a king." God led Samuel to a tall, handsome man named Saul, from the tribe of Benjamin. Humble at first, Saul hid among the baggage when chosen. But the people shouted with joy, "Long live the king!" Saul began well, leading in battle, uniting the tribes. But his heart grew impatient. When Samuel delayed at Gilgal, Saul offered sacrifices himself, a task meant only for priests. "You have acted foolishly," Samuel said. "Your kingdom will not endure. The Lord seeks a man after his own heart." Then came Amalek. God commanded, "Destroy everything, man and beast." Saul disobeyed. He spared the king and the best animals. When confronted, Saul defended himself. "I kept them to sacrifice to the Lord." But Samuel replied, "To obey is better than sacrifice." And he spoke a final judgment. "Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." God sent Samuel to Bethlehem, to the house of Jesse. There, among 8 sons, stood a boy tending sheep. God said, "Anoint him." His name was David. The Spirit rushed upon him, even as the Spirit departed from Saul. An evil spirit tormented Saul, and someone suggested music. They brought David, the shepherd, and when he played, peace returned to the king. Soon after, a giant named Goliath stepped into Israel's story. A Philistine warrior, over 9 feet tall, clad in bronze, he mocked Israel's army for 40 days. David, delivering bread to his brothers, heard him. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, defying the armies of the living God?" he asked, with a sling, a stone, and unshaken faith. David stood before Goliath. "You come with sword and spear," he said, "but I come in the name of the Lord." He slung the stone. It struck Goliath's forehead. The giant fell. Israel surged forward, the Philistines fled. David became a hero. But Saul's heart darkened with jealousy. He eyed David with suspicion. He tried to kill him with a spear. Then he sent him on dangerous missions, hoping he'd fall. But David prospered. Even Saul's son Jonathan loved David as his own soul. Saul hunted David. David fled to caves and foreign lands, always escaping, never striking back. Once David crept into Saul's camp and took his spear. Another time, he cut off a piece of Saul's robe. "I will not touch the Lord's anointed," he said. Eventually, Saul died in battle. Wounded by arrows, he fell on his own sword. Jonathan died with him. David wept for them. Then he was crowned king, first in Hebron, then over all Israel. He captured Jerusalem, danced before the Ark of the Covenant, wrote psalms of praise and sorrow. But even David stumbled. He saw Bathsheba bathing. He desired her. He sent for her. When she became pregnant, he tried to cover it. Her husband, Uriah, was sent to the front lines and killed. David married her. A child was born. But the prophet Nathan came. "You are the man," he said. David's heart broke. "I have sinned," he cried. God forgave, but the child died. Later, Bathsheba bore another son, Solomon. David's life was filled with triumph and tragedy. Rebellion, betrayal, songs of joy, cries of grief. As his days ended, he passed the kingdom to Solomon. And the story would continue, through temples and exile, prophets and kings. Failures and flickers of hope. Through centuries of silence and songs. Until one night, in Bethlehem, the city of David, a baby's cry pierced the dark. Born to a virgin. Laid in a manger. Angels sang. Shepherds came. And the story, once told through shadows and sacrifices, stepped into flesh. The Word became flesh. And dwelled among us. But that is a story for another night.